Handwriting for kindergartners begins at the beginning of the year with them getting a composition book. They all look forward to this when they're 3- and 4-year-olds. They see other kindergartners doing it. And when they begin their kindergarten year, it's one of the most wonderful things that they can get their first week of school. They write their name in their best handwriting on the front. On the first page, they draw a picture of themselves. They can put their friends with it or their family with it, but it's a self-portrait. Throughout the year, they put different writing sheets in their book. Any writing that they're choosing off the shelf or any work that they're doing. If they're doing nomenclature that's on the shelf on caves and they want to draw a picture of one of the nomenclature cards, they can do that. If they can't write the name that they want written on it, teachers can trace it with pencil or a yellow marker, and then they can trace over it. So all different types of work is done. They can also do work where you dictate numbers and letters to them so that you can observe whether they're really forming them correctly. They can do adding, patterning, sequencing, word work. They can put a calendar in their book if they'd like to. If they're using nomenclature cards, they can draw a picture of the animal or the place, and then they can ask a teacher to trace the sentence or the word so that they can retrace it in color. They can make their own number books where they're writing all of the numbers themselves, staple it into a book, and then attach it into their journal book. They can do name writing, missing number work. They don't have to do work every day in their book, but if they want to, they can. Some children at the beginning of the year will think that they can do all 100 pages in a few days. And for those children, you have to guide them that they really can only put their age of pages in the book. Here are some words that this child has written all by himself and drawn his own pictures. And on the opposite page, he's done the tracer versions. He's gone all the way through the alphabet doing that. In the geography area, when you're studying a particular continent, if they want to do continent work, you can add work from our world mammal materials, and they can write things from Africa that they have also used as nomenclature cards on the shelf. We're going to flip through to the back of this book just to give you an idea of the type of work that students do in their books. And this child did 2 books during the school year. So this was his first book. And then when he finished this book, he got to take it home, and he got a new book. His second book for the year repeats the same process where you do a self-portrait on the first page. You can see that he's a half year older, and his artwork is a little bit more refined as his expression of who all is in his life. Once again, he's putting work in his book that is on the shelf and on the writing shelf and the geography shelves and whatever else he wants to do. If he wants to do story problems in math, they can be put in his book. Workbook sheets, pictures from geography, and he can even diagram sentences in his book. Once this book is finished at the end of the year, it goes home with him. Kindergarten students like to do a lot of writing, and they like to do story writing. When we first introduce story writing, we introduce it with these little booklets, and we sit down together with a book that we call our classroom book, and we write stories together, and the teacher writes the story as the students tell her the story. Here's a story that the kindergartners and I wrote called The Cat. The cat is gray, the cat purrs, the cat sleeps on the couch, the cat's name is Yoda. Over the course of a week or two, we wrote different stories that they suggested that we write. And they came up with all the stories, and I did the writing. And then this book appeared on the shelf in a tray, and they got their own books for writing. Their first work was to copy the stories in this book. So they wrote their name on their books, and then they opened up their book after choosing a story, and they chose to copy it. So when the kindergarten is ready to write stories, they go to the shelf, and they get the story writing book, and then they copy the story. Here is the story, The Cat, copied by one of the 5-year-old boys in my classroom. When we're working with story writing, there are several different things that we teach them along with writing the story. We teach them about capitalization, how the title of a story is always capitalized, and both the words in the title are capitalized. We teach them that the beginning of each sentence starts with a capital letter, and that the end of each sentence has punctuation after it, either periods, question marks, or exclamation marks. We also teach about spacing and how important it is to put your finger down between each word so there are spaces between it. This way it makes it easy for our eyes to read the story. So when they're copying the stories, they're really focusing on these different things. Whenever we introduce story writing in the story writing books, we ask students to use a pencil now instead of using markers. So on the shelf behind the marker jars, there is always a jar of pencils. We use big kindergarten pencils as well as mechanical pencils. We usually have erasers in the jar too, so they can erase any mistakes that they make. So if a child brings you their story and you find that they forgot to put in their capital letters, it is definitely the time to put their attention upon it and to ask them to either erase it or use a mistake sticker to correct it. We do the same thing with punctuation and with spacing. So as they continue copying their stories day by day, they choose a story from their book, and they don't have to choose the order. They can go in order or they don't have to. So they will copy it and they will illustrate it any way that they want to. One thing that I've always noticed in the classroom with kindergartners is that they like to do this work together. So often they'll go get the book and 2 or 3 of them will sit there copying the same story. What then evolves after they're finished copying the stories in your book is they then want to make up their own stories all by themselves. They don't want to copy it anymore. Their handwriting is beautiful. They've learned how to write on the lines, and they want to make up their own stories. I have some samples of that in this book. And they will often write the stories together. Here's a sample of some of those stories. My pets sleep. My pets walk on their feet. They are fun. They play with me. They follow me. My family. My family. My family is nice. My family are good. My family are the best. I love my family. My friends. My friends are good. My friends are nice. My friends are the best. I love my friends. And here the child has drawn each one of their friends and written their name. Other stories include My Classroom, The Time of Japan, My Parents. My parents are fun. My parents play with me. My parents love me. I love my parents. The Rainbow, My House, My Teachers, My Friends, and Easter. So as they fill up each one of these books, the books go home, or they get to keep them at school until they want to take them all home together. The other thing that we like to do in the classroom near the end of the year is a poetry book. So we follow the same procedure that we followed for story writing. We sit down with the kindergartners and we write poetry with them. And we also have presented poetry to the class as a whole when we're reading stories. And they get to copy the poetry. They get to create their own poetry. Then at the end of the year, with our kindergartners, we do something really, really special with all of their writing work. We bring in wooden boxes of some type that we all decorate. They can decorate all the sides. Their friends sign the name on the back so that they have a record of all their friends that they went to school with. And then inside, they decorate it. And inside their books, inside their box, they put all of their story writing books, all of their poetry books, and all of their journals from the school year. And then this goes home with them on the day that they graduate. They get to take this box home with all of their writing work in it. We also, as teachers, at the last week of school, each day we will give them one treasure to put in their box to remember school. It may be a tiny cube from the Pink Tower. It may be a 10 bar from the Golden Bead Bank. It's little treasures that they will recognize years later when they've graduated from school and gone on with their life. These kindergarten treasure boxes are really very, very special. I did not realize how special they were until one night, late at night, I was in Myers doing some shopping, and an older teenage boy came up to me with his dad, and he said, "Do you remember me?" And I remembered his dad, but I had no recollection of him being 6 foot tall. And I said, "Well, I remember who you are. You're Chaz's dad. How is Chaz?" And he looked over at his son and he said, "Why don't you ask him? He's the one that recognized you." And when I asked Chaz, "Do you remember me?" And he said, "Yes, I do remember you. I still have the wooden toys that I made in your classroom, and I still have my treasure box with all of my writing in it." So these things are very, very special and dear to children, and this is our way to honor them and also all the great work that they do in our schools.